Hi, my name is Mark Bünger. I'm a research director here at Lux Research, and I'm really excited about what I'm here to talk with you about today, and that's the maker movement. Now, if you haven't heard of the maker movement, it's a worldwide phenomenon where people who like tinkering with things, sometimes it's electronics, it could be sewing, it could be things that we kind of think of as hobbies, are starting to scale those hobbies up and produce products and services that all of us can enjoy and use. So one of the most famous examples of this is the watch I've got on right here. So this is a Pebble smartwatch. It came out about a year ago, and it was at the time one of the biggest projects ever funded on a site called Kickstarter. So now I've given you three things here: Pebble watch, maker movement, Kickstarter. How do the three of those fit together? Well, this watch was actually built by a very small team of young engineers. They were having trouble getting venture funding for their idea, and so they turned to a site called Kickstarter. So these makers turned to Kickstarter and said, hey, this is the watch we're going to build, and if you'll pay us $150, we'll send you the watch when it's ready. And there were other amounts that you could give, but all of these were basically ways for them to raise money without sacrificing equity in the company that they were trying to build. At the same time, all the people who were giving them that money became part of the development process. So it kept the team on a very, very tight schedule, and ultimately they raised $10 million, which is about, I think they initially looked at raising 100 or 200,000. There's a lot more than they'd anticipated bringing on because the watch was so popular. Well, that's where this turned into a business story. Because they had something like 85,000 people wanting the watch now and not a few thousand, in other words, a number that they could build on their own, they had to figure out a way to scale up the business. And what we saw with Pebble scaling up their business applies to a lot of other businesses, and that's why I think corporations should be looking at this area today, because it gives us a lot of lessons about how innovation is going to be happening in the future. So when we think about big and scaling up, one of the first industries that comes to mind is automotive. Now, you might not think it'd be very easy to kickstart or do a maker movement type of vehicle, but in fact that's happened. So there's a company called Local Motors, and they've produced a gorgeous vehicle called the Rally Fighter. And so the Rally Fighter was designed by a crowd, basically a bunch of aspiring automotive designers and engineers who wanted to put together their dream vehicle. This team, over the course of 18 months from scratch, created a vehicle that could be produced, driven, pass safety tests and everything else. And that's compared to about 60 months for a typical OEM. They also did it for about $3 million compared to roughly $1 billion for a typical car maker. So they vastly sped up the process of envisioning and designing a vehicle, and did it on a shoestring compared to what car makers normally would spend. So that in of itself is exciting. But going back to what I was saying earlier about scaling up, one of the important things about scale is that typically you have to reach a certain large scale to break even. And a lot of these maker projects break even at such a small scale that they're really potentially disruptive. They can go after niches that we normally wouldn't even be able to address. So the Rally Fighter is meant to produce 2,000 vehicles and then be done. They can break even with that, and everybody goes away happy, and 2,000 people will get a really, really good-looking car. Now, that doesn't mean that only outsiders can do this type of innovation. And Ford's done a really good job with its own engineering team. They have a program together with a company called Tech Shop. Now, Tech Shop is kind of like a gym, or you go to a gym, you get special equipment, you get access to great machines that you could never really afford at home. Tech Shop's kind of the same way, but it's high-end 3D printers, CNC machines, welding equipment, a lot of stuff and materials that you wouldn't really be able to afford at home, as well as the equivalent of personal trainers who can teach you how to use it. So within a year of launching the program, in which basically Ford's team had all got memberships to Tech Shop, they got 50% more patentable invention in the course of that year. Now, Ford's doing a lot of other really interesting things by engaging the crowd and the community, and one is an OpenXC program. So this is basically they've opened up a lot of the software and electronics interfaces to hackers out there in the world, had hackathons at places like Tech Shop, and really invited the crowd and the community to become part of designing the next vehicles. So So there are a lot of ways that corporations can interact with the maker movement, involve it in their innovation work, and I see this as a really, really bright spot for things to come. So if you're interested in the maker movement and how this type of innovation might be able to help you in your business, give us an email or a call, info@luxresearchinc.com, and we'd be happy to point you to some other examples directly in your industry, give you some contacts with the people that are working on this, and hopefully make it part of your reality too.